Hi, welcome to Crime Clueless. We're your hosts. I'm Jenna.
And I'm Laura. And before we get started today, we just wanted to ask a quick favor. If you value the work that we do here at Crime Clueless, please take a moment to rate and review our show. It really makes such a big difference. On Apple Podcasts, we just have to scroll down on the show page and tap the stars. Or if you feel so inclined, you can write us a quick review. On Spotify, you can hit the star at the top of the app. It only takes a second. If you do listen on Audible, you can scroll down and tap write a review right under the episode list. And if you're watching or listening on YouTube, just make sure you're subscribed. Tap the bell icon so you don't miss any of our new episodes.
Thank you, Laura. The case I have for you today is one of the most baffling mysteries I've ever come across. It's a case with international intrigue, a cross-country chase, and clues that seem to lead nowhere. We're talking about a young man on the run, a stash of cash and gold left strewn around a crime scene, and a violent death that defies explanation. It's the kind of story that leaves you with so many questions. Why did he travel thousands of miles for no clear reason? Who or what was he so afraid of? And how did he end up murdered in such bizarre circumstances? Stick around because we'll be laying out all the puzzle pieces, and believe me, they are scattered in this one. This is the unsolved murder of Blair Adams.
Hey, didn't we do this one in a Two Truths and a Lie?
We did. You did this one for me, I believe.
Yes.
And ever since then, I've wanted to cover it.
Yes. So if you missed that Two Truths and a Lie, find that on our Instagram page. That's interesting.
Yes. And this is a crazy, perplexing case. So definitely check out the Two Truths and a Lie. And I feel like I might have got this one wrong. It might have been the one that I got wrong, but I can't exactly remember.
Oh, I can't remember either.
We'll have to go watch it ourselves. Yeah.
Yep. I remember looking this one up, but I don't remember if you got it right or not.
I don't remember. Well, this case had even seasoned investigators throwing up their hands. In fact, one detective said, quote, "Every aspect of this case is mysterious. There's no explanation for it." And that really pretty much sums it up. Blair Adams was a 31-year-old Canadian man found dead over 2,000 miles from home in a parking lot in Tennessee with all his money and valuables untouched around him. How on earth did he get there and what happened? Let's dive into this head-scratching case and see if we can make sense of the senseless.
So interesting.
Yeah, it is wild.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear what you found on this case.
A lot. This is going to be a long one.
All right.
I can't leave any part of it out. Yes. Before all the chaos, Blair Adams was, by most accounts, a regular, cheerful guy. He lived in Surrey, British Columbia, and worked as a construction foreman. Those who knew him say he liked his work and he did it well. Blair had struggled with alcohol in the past, but by 1996, he had been sober for 2 years and had been attending Alcoholics Anonymous meetings, at least until he inexplicably stopped going. In the summer of 1996, friends and family started noticing that Blair wasn't quite himself. His mood became erratic and he suffered wild mood swings. He wasn't sleeping well either. Blair's mother, Sandra, knew something was very wrong. She kept asking him what was troubling him, and Blair gave a chillingly vague answer. He said, "I don't think I should tell you about it." And to this day, Sandra doesn't know what it was.
Really interesting.
Yeah. And then you always go back and think, I wish I would have cried more. Or, it's hard when he's 31, he's an adult, but
ask more questions. It's hard to not feel like you should have asked more.
And you can't know at the time. Right.
Yeah. That's a bizarre answer.
Yeah. Blair's behavior only got stranger. At work, this reliable foreman started doing odd things like leaving the construction site unlocked at the end of the day. He grew so anxious and distracted that his coworkers suggested he see a doctor. In early July 1996, Blair abruptly quit his job, and he didn't even bother to pick up his last paycheck, telling his boss he, quote, didn't know if he could carry on here. Around the same time, Blair told his mom that people were spreading rumors about him, and he wouldn't explain that any further either. He confided to a few friends that he was scared someone was trying to kill him. And let me repeat that. Blair was convinced his life was in danger.
So he told people he thought someone was trying to kill him?
Yeah. And not in a dramatic, I have enemies everywhere kind of way. People described it as very real fear, like quiet panic, not attention seeking, not exaggerated, just something is wrong here and I feel like I'm in danger. And the part that gets me is he wasn't saying it once, he was saying it to multiple people, which is one of those moments where looking back, you wish someone had said, hey, we need to pause everything and figure out what's happening with you, what's going on.
Yeah, for sure.
And this wasn't a casual worry. He seemed genuinely terrified, but he refused to give details about why or who. In hindsight, it's hard not to get chills at Blair's premonition because, as it turned out, he was right. His life was in danger.
Was anyone taking him seriously at the time?
Not really. And honestly, I feel like that's human nature. You know, if someone suddenly says someone is trying to kill me, your brain goes to stress, burnout, breakup, something like that. Not, oh, wow, you might be right. But hindsight is brutal in cases like this. So here we have a kind, hardworking 31-year-old who suddenly becomes panicked and paranoid for reasons unknown. No one close to him could figure out what was wrong. Was he having a mental breakdown or was there truly someone after him?
Was he showing mental health warning signs before this? Had he ever had, mental health issues?
Not in any diagnosed way. People were just noticing changes in the moment, the sleep issues, the paranoia, the mood swings. And honestly, what's scary is how fast it seemed to escalate because this wasn't a years long decline. It was in a matter of weeks.
And sometimes people can, if they do have a mental break, it can be like a switch. Stress or something can bring that on. It can be a fast thing. So
It
I don't know.
Could have been. It's very possible.
I mean, they can have all of a sudden schizophrenic episodes or things like that. And maybe he was having that paranoia. Maybe it was stress from his job or something like that. I think
Especially
that age is a pretty common age too.
Yes, I think you're right, especially in males.
So men is like 18 to 25.
So a little bit younger than he was.
Women is what I was thinking. So 20 to early 30s due to high stress life transition, or in middle ages, 45 to 54.
Interesting.
Mid 30s to early 40s are high risk periods due to caregiving, career pressure, and burnout. So more women during that time than men. Early adulthood or like midlife crisis time, like 40 to 50s.
This could be early adulthood.
So it's saying 18 to 25.
So a little bit later than that.
Yeah, according to studies, peak time for the initial onset of many mental health conditions and high anxiety. But like substance abuse, excessive work, escapist behavior is what it's calling it. Substance abuse can be like early warning signs.
Maybe it had been smoldering. Just I wish he had visited a doctor like people at work were begging him to.
Yeah.
Blair wasn't talking except to insist that he had to get away, which the escapist that you just said. This is the mindset Blair was in when we head into the critical early days of July 1996, when his desperate attempt to escape whatever he feared would lead him on a bizarre journey.
Did anyone that he knew say he had people who were like his enemies or someone who didn't like him or drama type stuff?
I mean, nothing that rises to international manhunt level. There were no crime connections, no major feuds that they could point to, no ex that screams Lifetime movie revenge plot, which honestly makes the case feel even stranger.
Did anybody think he was in real danger? Or did they think he was being more paranoid about something?
His family believed that he was scared, but they didn't have proof that someone was actually after him. And families often feel, if my loved one says they're scared, something must be wrong. Sometimes they're right, sometimes it's internal. That gray area is pretty brutal.
And it'd be
Blair's
hard to go back. And I think that would be really
Mhm.
hard to have not believed him fully. And then something like this happens. That would be really difficult as a family member
Yeah,
or a friend or
yeah.
anybody.
Blair's spiral reached a breaking point on Friday, July 5th, 1996. On that day, seemingly out of nowhere, Blair emptied his bank accounts and his safety deposit box. He withdrew almost all of his savings and grabbed a small fortune in valuables, more than 6,000 in cash, plus thousands more in jewelry, gold, and platinum. He stuffed these items into a fanny pack. Yes, fanny pack, and set off.
Interesting. Do you feel like he was trying to escape or just running away from what he thought was coming after him?
Possibly, or he just wanted everything portable and accessible. This was essentially Blair's run for it fund. It seems that he was liquidating everything he had for something. Whatever he was planning, it was urgent and not exactly well thought out.
Was he telling anyone where he was going?
No, he kept everything really vague.
Was he normally vague or did he share more with his family normally, or was this kind of how he usually was?
Now, this was totally out of character. He wasn't someone known for being impulsive. He wasn't known for paranoia. No one described him as ever having made chaotic life choices in the past. And then suddenly he's crossing borders, emptying accounts, and changing countries. It's like someone's personality flipped overnight.
Did he ever tell anybody, like specific people, or was he vague about that too? Just that he couldn't explain it?
Yes. And that's one of the biggest frustrations in this case. He never said any specific person was after him because if he had said it's this person, investigators would have at least had a starting point. Instead, it's just they, which is terrifying and also completely impossible to investigate. By Sunday, July 7th, Blair put Plan Escape into action. He headed for the US border. Specifically, he drove his Chevrolet Chevette to Victoria, British Columbia, aiming to take the ferry from Victoria to Seattle in the United States. But Blair hit a snag. At the ferry crossing, US immigration took one look at this single guy carrying a boatload of cash and thought, potential drug courier. He fit the profile. He was young, traveling alone, lots of cash with no clear reason. They pulled him aside. When they ran his info, they discovered Blair had lied about having no criminal record. He did have a few past charges, nothing major, but enough to get him flagged. And that was it. The US border agents denied Blair entry on the spot. He was turned back to Canada, frustrated and still very much stuck with whatever, real or imagined, threat that he was fleeing.
Had he told his family that he was leaving?
No, he might have said that he needed to get away, but he never told them specifically where. And because of that, it makes this case 100 times harder to solve because nobody could say, oh, yeah, he was going to meet this person or specifically going to this place for X, Y, and Z reason. Now, Blair didn't give up after not making it into Seattle. The very next day, Monday, July 8th, he tried a different approach. First, in the morning, Blair showed up at his construction job site because remember, he had essentially quit and just said he was done. He wasn't there to work, though. He asked his boss for the paycheck he'd left behind. and he formally quit if his boss hadn't already assumed as much, which he probably did. With that loose end tied up, Blair immediately pivoted to a new getaway plan, Germany. That afternoon, he went to a travel agency and bought an airline ticket to Frankfurt, Germany for roughly $1,600. It was a round trip ticket scheduled to depart the next day, July 9th.
Interesting. Do we know why he was trying to go to Germany?
Germany was familiar to Blair. He had spent a stint working in Germany in late 1995, so 7 months prior, for his stepfather's construction company. And he had dated a woman in Frankfurt during that time. By 1996, he had returned to Canada.
So, if he was dating a woman in Germany before, did they talk to her? Had he told her that he was coming?
Great question. They did talk to her, and she had not heard anything from him. And, on the surface, maybe if you're trying to leave Canada and your brain doesn't always have the best choices when you're panicking, it was, I'm going to pick a place I've been before, but I'm not sure because he had broken up with that woman. They weren't dating at the time. I'm not sure if he wanted to see her, but he never contacted her. Now, here's where things get even more confusing. Just a few hours after buying that ticket to Germany, Blair abruptly changed his mind again. Despite paying all that money for a plane ticket, he decided he wasn't going to Germany. That evening, he turned up at a friend's house in an absolute panic. He pounded on his friend's door, terrified, and begged for help. Blair told this friend that someone was trying to kill him and he needed to get across the US border right away. And to me, that's interesting. Like, you have a ticket to Germany tomorrow. Why now do you have to get across the US border instead? It's hard to imagine being on the receiving end of that. Your buddy shows up frantic, convinced that someone is trying to kill him. Blair begged this friend to drive him across the border that night. The friend was understandably hesitant, probably thinking something was going on with Blair and he wasn't in his right mind. The friend declined to smuggle him into the States. And so with that, Blair was left to his own devices again. By now, he had completely ditched the idea of going to Germany. Even though he had the flight booked, he was not planning to take it.
Was he, when he went to that friend's house, was he just panicked or did he have some kind of idea at all?
It seemed like he was an organized panic. Like, he had made these complex travel arrangements and moves, but he really came across as panicked.
Did he ever go to the police at all?
Not that I know of.
Yeah, why wouldn't he go tell the police if he's convinced someone's trying to kill him?
I'm not sure. And it would have been great if someone else had gone to the police on his behalf, but that didn't happen either.
Did he say that someone was trying to follow him? I'm just wondering why he felt such the need to get out of the country,
Same. We don't know if someone was physically following him, but 1996, I mean, cell phones are relatively new, but they exist. I'm not sure how he knew that someone was trying to kill him, and he never specifically told anybody. His behavior, though, absolutely suggests that he felt like he was being watched or followed, but we don't know. Now, on Tuesday, July 9th, Blair Adams went into full-on escape mode. Instead of packing for Germany, he returned his unused airline ticket and he was able to get a refund. And now he's back to focusing all of his attention on getting into the US by any means necessary.
Do you know why he was changing his plans like this? I mean, he had an escape. Why wouldn't he have just gone to Germany?
That's what I can't figure out either, because to tell his friend that he absolutely has to get across the US border, and that's where all of the steps that he took in these days leading up to it feels less like planning and more like reacting to the situation. Like, he was making decisions based on fear spikes and not strategy. And honestly, if you've ever panic booked something at 2 a.m., imagine that, but on an international level. Before dawn on July 9th, near the Pacific Highway border crossing south of Vancouver, Blair tried something desperate, crossing the border on foot. He attempted to just walk across the US border, and this did not go well. Canadian Border Patrol officers spotted Blair wandering near the crossing, and they described him as looking disoriented. They stopped him. They noticed that he had scratches on his hands and his legs, as if he'd been running through thorns or brush in the dark. To make matters worse, Blair happened to match the description of a suspect in a recent car theft. A blue car had been stolen in Vancouver and found abandoned near that very border crossing, right around the time Blair showed up. The officers suspected that Blair might have stolen that car and ditched it when he couldn't drive across the border. We can try to imagine Blair's mindset. He's frantic. He's possibly just stolen a car and crashed it, or he's been running through the woods trying to sneak into the US. Agents detained him and questioned him about the car. Blair vehemently denied stealing any vehicle. And in the end, the police didn't have any hard evidence to tie him to the theft, so they did let him go. Interestingly, though, one of Blair's friends later told authorities that she had seen him driving a blue car, not his usual Chevette, the day before. So this raises an eyebrow. Did Blair actually steal a car in his desperation to escape? It looks possible, but it was never proven. With another plan thwarted again, Blair regrouped. Later on July 9th, after the failed foot crossing, he finally found a way to get into the United States. He went to the Vancouver International Airport. He abandoned his Chevette in the parking lot. He rented a car, a Nissan Altima, with a legitimate rental car and presumably a plan to blend in as a normal tourist. Blair drove south and successfully crossed the border without incident. Third time's the charm, I guess.
I wonder why he could get through this. I guess if he's not some guy carrying a whole bunch of money in a fanny pack, maybe it doesn't look as
Yeah.
sketchy.
Or trying to just walk through on foot.
Run
Also,
through the border.
Yeah,
That's sketchy
exactly.
too.
Yeah. Once in Seattle, Blair headed to the Seattle-Tacoma, the SeaTac airport, perhaps remembering that he still wanted to put distance between himself and Canada or whoever he thought was after him. Blair bought a plane ticket to Washington, D.C., and not a round trip this time, but a one-way overnight flight that departed that very day, July 9th, and arrived in D.C. the next morning. He paid $800 for that one-way ticket, even though a round trip would have cost half as much. It seems the money was no object. He just wanted to move and continue moving. This choice baffles travel agents and detectives alike. Why DC? If Blair's goal was to get as far away from British Columbia as possible, though, he achieved that. DC is about 2,800 miles away.
I mean, he
But
could have gone to Florida though. There's
could
like
have.
so many other places too. It's interesting.
Germany is even further.
Yeah. And he
But
had that booked.
maybe he thought that he has a connection to Germany, so it would be too obvious. And he has no
Maybe.
connection to DC.
Maybe.
His ultimate movements suggest that even DC wasn't his destination. It was just another stop. Early on Wednesday, July 10th, Blair landed at Washington International Airport on the US East Coast. Now, we have Blair, who's in such a hurry to get to the US that he flew across the entire country overnight. He didn't stay put in Washington, though. At 6:45 a.m., Blair went straight to the rental car counter and rented yet another car, this time a white Toyota Camry. Without missing a beat, he got on the road and headed south. And next stop, who knows? As it turned out, he ended up stopping in Knoxville, Tennessee. We don't know if even Blair knew where he wanted to head at the time. Perhaps he was just driving, moving aimlessly, or following some plan known only to him.
And he didn't tell anybody these plans. No one knew where he was or where he was going.
No, nobody. As Blair drove through the morning of July 10th, he had a minor mishap near a town called Troy, Virginia, which is halfway between DC and Tennessee. Blair backed the Camry into another motor vehicle on the highway. Like he was trying to turn or merge something. It was a minor fender bender that caused only a little bit of damage. The other driver later said that Blair seemed nice, but that he was in a hurry. Blair exchanged information politely and then continued on his way. It's as if nothing would slow him down, not even a car accident. He was single-mindedly pushing forward. By the evening of July 10th, Blair had made it to East Tennessee, over 500 miles southwest of Washington, D.C. That's a lot of miles
That is.
have traveled from all the different places he's gone. Sometime around 5:30 p.m., he pulled off Interstate 40 at the Strawberry Plains Pike exit just outside Knoxville. At this point, Blair's frantic journey had brought him to a place he had zero connections. Seriously, no one could later find any reason for him to be in Knoxville. As one detective put it, he had no reason to be in East Tennessee. He knew no one here. Yet that's where he was, and his troubles were far from over. Blair stopped at a BP gas station off the highway, and he encountered another bizarre hurdle, more car trouble. Or at least he thought he had car trouble. He told the gas station clerk that he couldn't start his Toyota Camry and was stranded. The clerk called for roadside assistance, and a repairman named Gerald Sapp responded to the call. When Sapp arrived, he found Blair in a perplexed state. It turned out the Camry was totally fine. The problem was that Blair was trying to use the wrong key to unlock and start it. Blair kept insisting the key in his hand was the right one, but it actually belonged to the Nissan Altima that he had rented and left back in Seattle. He had mixed up the keys from his two rentals. Sapp realized this immediately and told Blair, "Buddy, check your pockets. If you drove this car here, you must have the right key on you." But Blair refused to even look in his pockets. He was absolutely convinced he had the correct key, and he wouldn't budge. Sapp later recalled telling him, "If you drove this thing up here, you gotta have another key."
Right?
But he could not convince Blair to look. He said that Blair thought he was nuts, and Blair was bound and determined that the key that he was holding, he had. In Sapp's words, Blair's mind just wouldn't even process that he might have the wrong key.
Weird.
Yeah.
That is so bizarre. Can you imagine being that car repair person being like, you have to have this other key. You have to keep looking. And he's like, no, I don't believe you.
Nope,
That would
don't
stick in
have
your
it.
mind.
Yes, it would. Sapp was completely unable to persuade Blair to find the right key, which really likely was on his person the whole time. So Sapp decided to help in another way. He arranged for a tow truck to pick up the Camry and take it to a repair shop for the night. Then Sapp offered to drive Blair to a nearby hotel so he'd have a place to stay, which is super nice.
I do wonder too, when do you think he slept last? It feels like he's probably been awake for a long time. I mean, he probably slept on the flight to DC, but then he's been driving all this time. He may have been.
That couldn't have been a long sleep, maybe 3-4 hours max.
Yeah. And he was awake the night when he was at his friend's house at 2 a.m. He's trying to run across the border. I wonder if he's like in some sleep deprived state too, which is terrifying that he's out driving around.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That was a really good point that I hadn't even really thought about.
I was thinking, I remember when I drove to Utah one time with the kids by myself, just like that drive, I remember getting to mom and dad's house and I just felt drained. And that wasn't even after the time change. Like think of the time change from where he was to the East Coast.
Yeah.
Because that's going to be like 3 hours. I don't know what the time is. And where was he at?
Yeah. Well,
Like
he
Vancouver?
lived in, and then he had gone from like Victoria to Seattle.
Yeah. So he's gone from several time zones, driven over 500 miles. His mind has
Yeah.
got to be
There's
broken
not
just
enough
from that.
caffeine in the world.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Blair accepted the ride.
Sorry.
No.
Vancouver is on Pacific time. So it's
So it
3
is
hours
3
different.
hours.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yikes.
I know. Yikes. And so with that time change, he arrived in Washington, D.C. and started driving at 6:45 a.m., which would be 3:45 a.m. That's a lot.
Yep.
When they arrived at the hotel, Blair just got out and absentmindedly walked away without his black duffel bag. He had left it in Sap's truck. So Sap called out to him, like, hey, don't forget your bag, and tried to return it to him. And that really highlights how distracted and probably sleep deprived Blair was. Sap said about Blair, the guy was not all there. He didn't appear to be messed up on drugs or alcohol or anything, but his mind wasn't functioning correctly for some reason. To Sap, Blair seemed like he either had something mentally going on, he seemed extremely confused, but notably not drunk or high. And indeed, toxicology tests later confirmed that Blair hadn't been using any substances. So whatever was going on with him was not from drugs or alcohol. Sap dropped Blair off at the Fairfield Inn Hotel on Cracker Barrel Lane near the highway. It was now about 7 p.m. on July 10th. And what unfolds next at the hotel is equal parts fascinating and tragic because it's essentially Blair's last known hours alive.
Yeah. I really do wonder if he was just so sleep deprived because really
Very
since
possible.
July 8th, he probably hasn't slept.
Hmm?
Or if so, only small amounts in small
Right.
stints.
Yes.
I can't imagine that
And
going on in
what
your
is
brain
he
either.
eating? What is he drinking
Yeah.
water? I mean, not taking care of himself in any of the ways
No.
that help you be mentally alert and capable.
Yeah.
At the Fairfield Inn, surveillance cameras captured Blair, and his behavior, to put it lightly, was odd. First, Blair approached the front desk and paid cash for a room. He gave them around $100. The room rate was closer to $50, and the desk clerk tried to give Blair about $50 in change, but Blair wouldn't even wait for it. He grabbed the room key and walked away, leaving the change on the desk. It's not every day that someone forgets $50. So again, we're seeing him agitated and distracted.
Well, and especially when he's on the run with his money, like you would think you would
It's
want to
important.
be keeping everything you can. That's all you have.
Yes, that's what I was thinking too. That's how you're going to rent a car or stay in a hotel or get a flight back
Fly
home.
across the country, like all
Yeah.
the things.
Yes. The hotel security camera footage showed that over the next hour, Blair entered and exited the hotel lobby 5 separate times.
Did he go to his room at all?
No, which is so eerie. He paid for the room, he got the room key, and he actually never went up. The room was never the point. But why pay for a room if you're not going to go sleep in it?
Yeah.
The cameras show him walking out and then coming back in and walking out again, pacing the lobby. It seemed like he was looking for someone or maybe worried that someone was looking for him. A hotel employee remembered Blair vividly. She said the best word to describe him was paranoid.
Did they think he was in danger at all? Did he look frightened or just what did they say?
They never said that they thought he was in danger, but multiple hotel employees did say paranoid. They said Blair seemed very nervous, very agitated, constantly glancing over his shoulder. One of the hotel employees said it seemed like he was expecting someone to come in, even though there wasn't anybody there. And she said, I don't know who he was looking for, but it seemed like he was waiting for somebody to walk in for him, which paints a haunting picture. Blair in this hotel lobby, which he hadn't planned to go to, only because he couldn't get his car to work. And this was the closest hotel to where he was. And that kind driver offered to drop him off here. So why would you be expecting somebody to walk in? You can see him on surveillance every time the door opens that his eyes dart over to see who was coming in or out.
Did they ever see him talking to anybody or with anybody?
No, he was watching everyone like he expected someone to show up, but he doesn't talk to anybody or make any contact in the lobby. At 7:37 p.m., Blair abruptly marched out the front door of the Fairfield Inn for the last time.
Did he say anything to anybody?
Nothing clear. It doesn't seem like he talked to anybody while he was there. He just had this anxious behavior. He did not go to the room that he paid for. He just left, but he did take the key card with him. This was the last confirmed sighting of Blair Adams while alive. Now, what happened after 7:37 p.m. is the missing piece of the puzzle, the gap that investigators have struggled to fill. We do have a few sightings and clues from later that night, though some are unconfirmed. There were reports that Blair was seen about an hour or two east of Knoxville that night at a place called T&R Truck Stop in Dandridge, Tennessee. 3 employees there claimed they saw a man matching Blair's description sometime between 9:30 and 10:30, which would be the right timing from when he walked out of the hotel. But also, how would he get there? He doesn't have a vehicle.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
And these employees said that he was not alone. He was with an unidentified man, and Blair was apparently flipping through some tattoo magazines and chatting about Canadian money. If true, that would mean that Blair had somehow traveled all this way east from his hotel. However, detectives later ruled out this truck stop sighting. They don't believe that it actually was Blair, but it is interesting that there were 3 separate people who say that it was Blair. It may have been a case of mistaken identity, perhaps another Canadian passing through, talking about Canadian currency, I guess, would make anyone think about this guy that's in the news, right? The sighting at that truck stop, though, is considered a red herring. A more plausible sighting took place much closer to the hotel. At a Cracker Barrel restaurant adjacent to the Fairfield Inn, 2 women told police that on the night of July 10th, they saw Blair Adams at the Cracker Barrel, and he was in the company of another man. This unknown man has never been identified. Interestingly, the 2 women gave slightly different descriptions of what the man looked like, but both were certain that Blair was there and interacting with him. The details of this encounter are fuzzy. We don't know if Blair and this man ate together, talked for a long time, or left together. But it was a significant lead for investigators. Blair might have found or met someone late that evening, possibly seeking help or companionship. Remember, Blair at this point had no car. It was in the shop and no one with him. So how was he getting around? He could have hitched a ride or gotten a taxi, maybe someone near the hotel he met and they went. I don't know. One thing we do know for sure, sometime that night, Blair ate a meal. The autopsy later found lettuce, meat, and shrimp in his stomach, and they think it was eaten pretty close to when he died. And shrimp, of all things, is not exactly fast food. So it suggests that maybe he ate at a restaurant or somewhere with a more substantial meal. It could have been at the Cracker Barrel or another place nearby.
Yeah, somewhere he could have walked to.
Yeah. Investigators concluded that Blair ate somewhere after leaving the hotel. And the presence of lettuce and shrimp is oddly specific. Maybe he had a salad or maybe there was a buffet. It's another little clue that Blair was still active and doing somewhat normal things like eating dinner during those final hours. After dinner, the trail goes cold. We have no confirmed sightings of Blair in the very late night or early morning hours. The next time Blair Adams appears in the records is tragically when his body is found. Fast forward to the next morning, July 11th, 1996, around 7:30 a.m. It's a Thursday, and two construction workers arrive at their job site. This is an under construction motel off Crosswood Boulevard near the Strawberry Plains Pike interchange in East Knox County. This location is basically across the street from the Fairfield Inn where Blair had gotten a room the night before. I don't know that he ever went to it. It's about half a mile away. The workers are probably expecting a routine day, but instead they stumble upon a scene straight out of a nightmare. There, in the middle of the empty parking lot of the construction site, they find a man's body. The man is only partially dressed, laying on the asphalt. He's lying on his back, and it's obvious that he's deceased. The workers initially thought that maybe he was an unhoused man who had slept there, but as they got closer, they realized this was something else entirely. There was blood, and the man wasn't sleeping. He was deceased. They called authorities immediately. Sheriff's deputies and investigators rushed to the scene and quickly identified the victim as Blair Adams, thanks to the documents in a wallet found nearby. But so many things about the scene were shocking and inexplicable. Blair was nude from the waist down. His shirt was ripped open and his pants had been removed, but not in a normal way. It looked like someone had maybe forcibly pulled his pants off of him. The pants were found inside out and lying on the ground not far from his body. His socks were off and turned inside out as well, and his shoes were off. Oddly, one of Blair's shoes was found under his head, as if Blair or someone else had placed it there, like a pillow, while he was on the ground. And that detail is both heartbreaking and strange. Did Blair do that trying to cushion his head? Or did an attacker put his head on the shoe for some reason? We don't know, but that image is incredibly sad. Money was scattered everywhere, and I do mean everywhere. Fluttering across the pavement around Blair were banknotes of various currencies. There were Canadian dollars, US dollars, and German Deutschmarks strewn around, totaling nearly 4,000 in value. It was like someone had busted open a bank and left the cash to the wind. Someone had literally dumped money all over the scene.
That's so weird. It's like they were looking for something, not wanting his money, but they left all the money behind.
Yeah, it's extremely weird. Usually, criminals like free money. They don't usually leave stacks of cash like party favors. That tells you robbery wasn't the main goal, or at least cash robbery, because I like what you just said. They were looking for something specific.
Well, and like how his everything was turned inside out. It's like they were looking for something, you know?
Yes, yes. Maybe in his shoe, in his sock, like, yes, looking for something.
Yeah.
This immediately struck investigators as completely backwards for a crime scene. So often money is a motive for murder, but here is all of Blair's money left untouched. One of the construction workers later admitted that before police arrived, he couldn't resist pocketing a couple of those loose bills. There's just cash laying around everywhere. But that's how unbothered the killer was about the money. Authorities did take back the money, though. Near Blair's body was his black duffel bag, the same one that Sapp had returned to him. Inside the bag were maps, travel receipts, and miscellaneous personal items. Nothing of obvious value there, just evidence of his journey, maps of routes he took, receipts from gas stations, etc., which later helped police piece together his path. Because remember, he didn't tell anyone where he was going or where he was stopping. Also found was Blair's fanny pack. It was lying on the ground, unzipped, and its contents were spilled out slightly, but all intact, unless there was something in there they took that we don't know. Inside the fanny pack were 5 troy ounces of gold bars, a bunch of gold and platinum coins, and a whole stash of jewelry, likely the ones from his deposit box. There was also more cash in there and a pair of sunglasses. And none of those valuables were taken either. The fanny pack was essentially a treasure chest. By today's prices, just the gold alone would be worth thousands of dollars. Yet, whoever killed Blair didn't even bother to steal it. It's as if robbery really had nothing to do with this. This fact is one of the biggest enigmas of the case. Why kill a man and leave behind jewelry and gold and cash? It had the detectives scratching their heads from the get-go. Investigators also recovered keys scattered around. Notably, one of those was the key to the Toyota Camry that Blair had rented. That was the key that Blair refused to try to find at the gas station. It was found near his body. And so either Blair eventually did find the right key on him at some point, or it had just spilled out in the chaos. In any case, that key and also the key card to his hotel room at the Fairfield Inn were found on the ground around his body. So Blair had those in his possession as well during whatever encounter led to his death.
How did they even begin to process that? There's so much going on and so wild.
Yeah. I'm assuming probably with a lot of what the heck is this? Very slowly, carefully. You don't usually come across a brutal homicide with valuables everywhere. There were indicators of a sexual assault and really no clear motive. It was like 3 different scenes smashed into one. Now, initial impressions, the scene looked almost staged in its oddity. The victim half-dressed, personal belongings scattered everywhere, and nothing obviously stolen. Law enforcement, when they arrived on the scene, even wondered if this was perhaps a sex crime, just given Blair's state of undress. There were no immediate sign of a firearm or a knife wound. There were signs of blood and signs of a beating. So investigators secured the area and began a meticulous search for evidence.
I was going to say, wouldn't it be so sad if he was that paranoid about something going on in Canada and then this was a random thing from, like if it was a sex crime and someone found him wandering the streets
Mm-hmm.
and it happened because he's fleeing his home?
That is honestly a very worthwhile path to go down because nobody knows if someone really was following him. No one knows why he ended up where he was. And there is the possibility that this was random and because he was in the wrong place at the wrong time, which is so baffling. And with that, that is where we are going to leave you for part 1. But don't worry, part 2 is available in your feed right now. Very fascinating, but confusing case. So sad. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Crime Clueless. We, as always, appreciate you spending your time with us. If you are looking to read more about this case or the resources that we used to create this episode, head over to our blog. You can find it on our website, crimeclueless.com. We would love to have you follow us on social media. We are on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube. Just search for @CrimeClueless. We'd love to hear from you, hear your thoughts, theories, feedback. If you enjoyed today's episode, we'd be so grateful if you would take a minute to rate, review, and or share our podcast. It means the world to us, and we read every single review. We are so grateful. Your support always helps us reach more listeners and grow our community. You can find Crime Clueless on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, and really all streaming platforms. Remember, refuse to be clueless, careless, or caught off guard.
Not today, murderers.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.